Tonight, a tour through Jasper, the toll of a destructive wildfire revealed. A third of the town scorched.
It is clear, sadly, that many homes and some businesses have been lost.
The heartbreaking road ahead for evacuees. And now questions over preparedness as people react to the devastation.
There's a lot of mixed emotions. It's very complex what you go through.
Also, Canada's soccer teams under the microscope as the fallout from a drone scandal escalates.
There are allegations of this going back several years.
Plus, pain on payday for customers of a major bank. What caused a delay in deposits? And fears for patient care as a specialized medical supply faces a critical shortage.
How do we make sure that the right people are getting tested?
Is a problem in the U.S. spreading north to Canada?
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. The wildfire emergency in Alberta has taken a drastic toll on Jasper. Hundreds of buildings, including homes and hotels, were destroyed when flames ripped through the community this week. The first official tour of the area revealed scorched buildings, twisted metal, and crumbled concrete. Some homes still smoldering as crews work to put out hotspots. About 1/3 of the pristine tourist town has been destroyed by that raging wildfire still burning out of control. Rain and cooler conditions are helping in the firefight, but it's simply too late for many. CTV's Andrew Johnson starts us off.
Western Jasper has been left an eerie wasteland. Buildings and cars burned beyond recognition, including Mayor Richard Ireland's childhood home.
I had a glimmer of hope. Came to the street corner and saw a foundation.
Ireland was joined by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and other ministers to see the almost unbelievable aftermath of the inferno that tore through the town.
There are hundreds of houses, whole neighborhoods, just gone.
More than 350 buildings in Jasper have been destroyed. Thousands of people remain out of their homes, and the Alberta government is speeding up their access to support.
Effective today, eligible evacuees from Jasper and from Jasper National Park can apply to receive a one-time payment to help get the support they need. That's, of course, $1,250 per adult and $500 per child.
In Jasper National Park, the two fires originally burning north and south of town have merged, now ravaging a combined 36,000 hectares. But in town, only hotspots remain being worked on by firefighters. With Jasper just about empty, RCMP are monitoring surveillance from infrared drones to keep an eye out for thieves.
We want citizens to know that when they're away from their residences, we're going to do everything we possibly can to ensure that those residents are safe.
There is no timeline yet for the thousands who evacuated to return to the place they love.
The residents have each other's backs. We're friends, we're neighbors, we're colleagues at work.
Some people will be returning with only the belongings they could stuff into a trailer or truck. Their house meeting the same fate as the mayor's. But they say turning their back on the community, even after this, simply isn't an option. Heather?
Andrew, thank you. As the scope and scale of destruction is revealed, people who live there are criticizing the federal government for not implementing more preventative measures to protect their town. CTV's Kathy Lee is with evacuees in Hinton, Alberta tonight.
Parts of the mountain town unrecognizable after wildfire roared through. Displaced residents of Jasper traumatized.
Sad, scared for the future. My anxiety's going crazy right now.
Anxious about how to navigate next steps. Some say they anticipated this nightmare.
We knew it was coming with all the dead trees and pine beetles and whatnot, and they're weren't putting in the fire brakes. I think it's partly government's fault.
As investigation unfolds in Jasper, you're going to see that there was a lot of fuel to fuel this fire that wasn't dealt with.
But officials say they were proactive for years, removing trees and branches, igniting controlled burns, and creating a fire break on the west side of town, which was damaged.
Steps were taken to protect us, but we simply cannot do enough to protect us against all risk.
But these winds that came and that shifted, it just changed the whole calculus.
Jasper sits in a high-risk wildfire area. Some locals wanted a 5-kilometer wide fire break around the entire town. One expert says it could have helped, but burning embers travel far.
This fire, even though it was kilometers from town, was already dropping millions and billions of little burning bits of bark and twig onto the town.
I am with them on keeping Jasper natural, but there has to be work done to prevent things like this from happening.
So, moving forward.
It's a wider conversation we need to have as we're going forward to make sure that we reduce some of this risk on the landscape.
Wildfire experts say fire smart programs, which encourages property owners to build with less flammable materials, in addition to other measures, should be mandatory, adding that Canada should have its own federal emergency management agency like the United States to be able to quickly deploy to natural disasters. Heather.
Kathy Lee in Hinton, Alberta. Thank you. A shift to cooler weather conditions has done little to help firefighting efforts in at least one community in British Columbia. Authorities say winds from a cold front are to blame for the dramatic escalation of an out-of-control fire burning near the town of Golden. The number of active wildfires in the province has dropped slightly, but there are still more than 400 burning across BC. California's largest wildfire of the year is now burning an area larger than Chicago. Crews are battling fast-moving flames and even a fire tornado. It's grown to about 180,000 acres. The fire started Wednesday, forcing thousands to flee. Police have arrested a man they believe started it after pushing a burning car into a gully. A spying scandal that could tarnish Canada's reputation on the world soccer stage has escalated. With the women's head coach booted from the Olympic Games, now we're learning the men's side may be guilty of deploying a similar drone tactic at international tournaments. CTV's Adrian Gabriel has been following the story for us.
Double down for the players in the red shirts.
An own goal by Soccer Canada has left the national program on the back foot.
A scandal or a crisis. I mean, there's no sort of sugarcoating this.
With the sheen on the reigning women's Olympic gold medal team now appearing tarnished, there's also new reports today that the men's side may also be guilty of attempting to deploy aerial reconnaissance as recently as this summer at the Copa America tournament.
There are allegations of this going back several years.
According to a report by TSN, sources say Canadian coaches and staff have for years tried to film their opponents' closed-door practices, including during the last Summer Olympics in Tokyo, where they won gold. The men's program has previously been accused of trying to cheat ahead of a qualifying match for the last World Cup. The coach of the men's side at that time was John Herdman. He's now at the helm of Toronto FC. He responded to the accusations today.
I'm highly confident that in my time as a head coach at an Olympic Games or World Cup, we've never been involved in any of those activities.
Not everyone is sold.
I'm skeptical. Didn't say anything about World Cup qualifying matches. 3
members of the women's Olympic staff have been sent packing, including British-born head coach Bev Priestman. The organization has committed to an external third-party investigation. With the previous success of the program now being called into question, Canadian soccer icon Christine Sinclair posted this message on her Instagram today saying, "I want to be clear that having been a national team player for 23 years, we were never shown or discussed drone footage in a team or individual meetings I've been present for."
There is sure to be a bright spotlight on the external investigation, and that likely won't shift for some time, with Canada set to co-host the upcoming World Cup of Soccer. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Much of the revelations about filming practices by drone came to light by way of exclusive reporting by TSN's Rick Westhead, who joins us again this evening. Rick, what more are you learning today?
Well, it's interesting. More and more people connected to Canada Soccer are reaching out, and some of those have shared that the men's national team, during the qualification for the World Cup in Qatar, were actually shown the closed training session, video of a closed training session of the Honduran national team, just days before Canada was scheduled to play against Honduras in a game. That game ultimately ended in a 1-1 tie. Also hearing from former contractors for Canada Soccer who are sharing their experiences and perspective on what it was like to be asked by Team Canada staff to go in and try to find hidden vantage points to record the closed training sessions of opposing teams. One of those former contractors said that they were a university student when they were assigned this job, and they were told, if you see yourself having a future with Canada Soccer, this is what it takes. You have to do this. And the contractor said that they went in and actually did film 2 United States team closed trainings before a game against Canada in Vancouver in 2017. And the contractor told me about how anxious they were, hyperventilated the whole way through it, were worried about being caught and getting in trouble for that.
Okay, Rick, so this will open a very wide window into soccer operations and who's involved. But I want to ask you about Canada's image. Over the past 2 years, we've seen soccer's popularity grow in Canada, plus strong international showings. What kind of an impact on Canada's image or the sport will this have moving forward?
Yeah, good question. Of course, Canada's learned the hard way about what cheating can do to our national image. And there will be some people who will argue, well, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And this is just how things go in international soccer. Teams cheat. That's interesting because the former Team Canada national team players that I've talked to over the last 48 hours completely reject that idea. They believe that, in Canada, we should be holding ourselves to a high standard and not worry about whether other countries are cheating, that it's just not acceptable. And it's a betrayal not only of teammates and coaching staff and the people connected to the program, but Canadians as a whole.
TSN's Rick Westhead for us tonight. Thanks, Rick. At the Olympic Games today, the historic opening ceremony in Paris. The rain-soaked event had much star power, including a performance from Canadian icon Celine Dion. All happening under a cloud of concern. Before dawn, an alarming attack on a major rail line, sabotaged. Here's CTV's Geneviève Boschman in Paris.
Heightened security fears and heavy rain shrouded Paris. But as the Games were officially declared open, the eyes of the world turned to the Eiffel Tower, to Céline Dion, to the Canadians' rendition of a song, L'Hymne à l'amour by legendary French star Edith Piaf, a grandiose, long-awaited moment for her fans.
We're here, we were singing, crying, screaming.
This after a historic parade of nations aboard boats on a choppy river Seine unfolded. France putting its history, its culture, and its best foot forward as hundreds of thousands watched the star-studded ceremony from the shores. Getting to the site was chaotic. Before dawn, vandals struck strategic targets of France's famed TGV, the high-speed rail network. A coordinated attack on signal boxes crippled high-speed rail lines to and from Paris. Some who did eventually travel in had considered staying away.
So we thought, if something happens, there are enough police people, so it will be okay, we thought. But it was a little bit scary.
The police presence was as unprecedented as the ceremony itself, with large sections of central Paris under lockdown. Organizers promised an aerial, naval, and ground bubble of security for the opening ceremony, hoping it would bring positivity, unity even, to a world torn by several wars. A wish Christian Joseph shares. He's from war-torn Kharkiv. We found him wearing Canadian colors and carrying a piece of shrapnel as a reminder of the horrors back home and his hope for peace.
Killed 6 or 7 persons, 4 kids, 2 women.
And the Olympics have long been billed as a moment to put sport at the service of peace. The IOC president urged the world tonight to have faith in the future and to celebrate our shared humanity. Heather.
Geneviève Boschman in Paris. Canada joined Australia and New Zealand today in renewed calls for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. In a joint statement, they say Israel must listen to the concerns of the international community. The protection of civilians is paramount and a requirement under international humanitarian law. Palestinian civilians cannot be made to pay the price of defeating Hamas. It must end. The leaders called on Israel to respond to a UN court ruling that its occupation of Palestinian territories is illegal and should end. Israel's prime minister met with Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump today during a visit to the United States. Trump welcomed Benjamin Netanyahu to his Florida resort, Mar-a-Lago. It's the pair's first face-to-face meeting in almost 4 years and was a step towards mending an alliance that became fractured after Netanyahu congratulated Joe Biden on his 2020 election win. Another important endorsement for Vice President Kamala Harris today as she inches closer to becoming the Democrats' official presidential nominee.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Harris, Barack, and Michelle Obama all posting this video to social media. This means Harris has now won the endorsement of all high-profile figures within her party. One of the world's most powerful drug lords has been arrested after being tricked into flying into the U.S. Ismael Zambada founded Mexico's infamous Sinaloa cartel with El Chapo. Federal agents lured the 76-year-old across the Mexican border, getting on a plane he didn't know was bound for Texas. When it touched down, he was arrested alongside another alleged cartel leader and son of El Chapo, Joaquin Guzman Lopez. Well, coming up, a critical shortage of specialized vials.
How do we make sure that the right people are getting tested?
Concerns over how limited supplies could impact patient care. Plus, bringing Indigenous beauty to Canada's biggest pageant. Hospitals in the U.S. are navigating a critical shortage of vials used for diagnostic tests. With concerns over its impact on the quality of patient care, some healthcare organizations in Canada are now taking steps to prepare for a possible shortage. CTV's Mike LeCouture explains.
They are specialized vials used to detect bacteria in people's blood, and right now they're in short supply. Some healthcare institutions are sounding the alarm.
We received a shipment of 10 individual bottles this week for our entire 1,700-bed hospital.
It's forced some labs to make difficult decisions, like collecting one sample instead of the usual 2. Earlier this week, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control issued an advisory saying this shortage has the potential to disrupt patient care by leading to delays in diagnosis, misdiagnosis, or other challenges in the clinical management of patients with certain infectious diseases. The company that makes the blood culture vials explained the shortage in a call to clinicians this week.
The issues are more complex than we originally communicated. That they originally communicated to us, and this will limit our ability to supply the blood culture vials within the U.S., but also globally.
In a statement to CTV News, Health Canada said it's in communication with the manufacturer, but Health Canada has not issued recommendations as BD is not anticipating a shortage in Canada. A potential shortage has led doctors on this side of the border to limit testing for patients who really need it.
How do we make sure that the right people are getting tests, that these are done in patients where it makes a big clinical difference?
In fact, 15 days ago, Alberta Health Services issued a notice to its labs warning of a supply shortage in blood culture bottles of up to 50% over the next several months. Alberta Health Services and Health Canada tell CTV News there is enough preserved supply of the vials. And federal officials add supplies will be available for labs when needed. Heather?
Mike, thank you. Still ahead for us tonight. Payday delayed for thousands of Canadians. A problem at one of Canada's biggest banks today left clients in a lurch as Payday was delayed. Scotia Bank said a technical issue affected direct deposits. CTV's Jeremy Sharon joins us with more. Jeremy, what went wrong here?
Heather, Scotia Bank says it resolved the issue this afternoon, but for hours today, the money was coming out, but it wasn't going into some clients' accounts. The Payday disaster for some Scotiabank clients resolved, according to the bank, around 2 o'clock this afternoon. Scotiabank posting this update on social media platform X, saying, "We're deeply sorry for the inconvenience. Clients will start to see their payments posted to their accounts. Any fees incurred as a result of this issue will be reimbursed." But this comes after a stressful morning for many Canadians. Clients posted online expressing their frustrations, also amplified by delayed communications from the bank, which issued an online statement hours after error reports started increasing from customers. Third-party website Down Detector showed a surge overnight in reported issues, which climbed to over 5,000 by 9 a.m. Now, it's not clear how many clients were impacted by this morning's outage, but we quickly heard from many on just how impactful even an hours-long delay like this can be, a sign of how many Canadians are struggling financially right now. Heather?
Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. After the break, representation on the world stage. We'll meet some of the contestants vying for the spotlight at Miss Universe Canada. For 60 women looking to represent our nation on the international stage, this weekend is a make-or-break moment. They're vying for the top spot of Miss Universe Canada. CTV's Rachel Crowe spreading wings on the cultural representation and some of those contestants.
Vonda Bullshield is fundraising for her first pageant ever, and it's the biggest one in the country. There's another first, too.
Within my interview process, I let them know that I do not want to be the token Indigenous person.
Bullshields is one of 4 Indigenous delegates competing for the Miss Universe Canada crown. Other delegates include Lanny Houle, Ashley Collingbull, and Jolanta Bird.
Shoot for the stars. There are so many of us that have applied. A huge part of our population is Indigenous, so I'm glad to see that the ratio is starting to reflect that.
To Bullshields, the organization is taking it upon themselves to implement Truth and Reconciliation recommendations.
We have quite a few Indigenous people representing. It's like they're answering those calls.
Bullshields says delegates were asked to show a piece that represents what Canada means to each of them. To her, it's a dark truth in the country.
To really highlight the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, LGBTQ Spirit Plus, and really making sure that that issue is highlighted on such a national platform.
Pageant organizers tell me they see this as a chance to raise awareness regarding issues impacting Indigenous communities. Meantime, Bullshields is learning as much as she can about pageantry. Contestants are gathering in Windsor, Ontario this week to compete, the final being on Sunday, July 28th. Rachel Crowe, Spreading Wings, CTV News.
That's our newscast for this Friday night. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.